There are a lot of gaming mysteries out there. You have Mount Chiliad in GTA 5. You have anything that Ubisoft decides to do with its games or company. You have Herobrine from Minecraft. You have G-Man from the Half-Life series. But then there's Half-Life 3, the biggest mystery in gaming. Everyone wants to know where this game is and whether it really even exists at all. More importantly, whether Valve can count to 3. When it comes to Half-Life, the last game, Half-Life 2, came out 21 years ago. The last time Valve even publicly made any moves on the franchise was in 2007 with Half-Life 2 Episode 2. So it's been a long time, and Valve has not said really anything about it. There have been hints here and there have been interviews where the CEO, we want this next game to go back to its psychological horror roots. But there hasn't been any real confirmation besides them basically admitting that it's in development by saying something like that. There hasn't been any real Half-Life 3 announced, and there hasn't been any clear Half-Life 3's canceled. There's been nothing. And so that sort of goes both ways, the fact that they haven't talked about it. What that does is it keeps fans in some awkward middle ground where they don't know whether they should believe whether it's coming or whether it's not. That's why there are 2 gaming announcements at every gaming event that people are constantly waiting for. So you have Bloodborne 2 or Bloodborne on PC, and then you have Half-Life 3. Every little tidbit, every little meme, every little rumor, people try to find a way to tie that into these games, or maybe there's some leak that means, this is going to be the one. Half-Life 3 is going to be revealed at this showcase. There's always something like that for one of those 2 games. Now, us gamers love to speculate, love to make Reddit threads, love to make creepypastas. It's a blast, and what it does is it brings the game to life in our minds. It gives the games an extended life cycle beyond just what we're seeing on the screen, beyond just the game we bought. That's why you have Herobrine from Minecraft, Zelda theory videos, those GTA mysteries. That's why they exist. They keep us wanting to go back, and it makes those worlds feel alive even if we aren't playing them. That's what's so intriguing about going back to an old Zelda game, or something like that. It really gets you interested. Every game has its lore, its fan theories, stuff like that, where you go back and if you look hard enough, you can find something in the code, or you'll see a certain shadow somewhere, where you'll think, holy cow, are the developers trying to trip me out here? Or what's going on here? All those theories bring these games to life. Other times they spookify games that otherwise wouldn't be spooky, where they add fun elements, like Pokemon or Super Mario Galaxy 2. It's just cool, man, and it's something us gamers love to do. We love to keep our games alive by bringing our imagination into it. So we love mysteries, but why is Half-Life 3 such a mystery? It's not because of us. Why haven't people just decided, well, Valve hasn't said anything, so it must not be coming out? Well, it's not that simple is the thing. Back in the day, Valve had stated that they wished to release a new episode for Half-Life 2 every 6 to 8 months. So naturally, fans of the franchise were expecting to see a new episode in 2008. After the last one, this episode 2 came out. Heck, there was even one announced in May of 2007 to be coming for Christmas of 2007. But it never came. The developers found themselves not meeting their own expectations when it came to the actual Half-Life episodes, and so there was a massive stall in progress. A stall that gaming is still waiting to see right itself to this day. So what happened? They moved on from episode 3 without much word, and safely, fans, gamers assumed that Half-Life 3 must be in the works. They'd assumed that Valve wanted to make something bigger and better. So what better way to do that than to make the next game, of course. Makes sense. But even now, 20 years later, the only real information anyone in the community has gathered is from leaks, code, concept art from episode 3 that you can find online. Each little tidbit, each little leak had gamers a little more excited each time, and naturally the anticipation began to build and build and build. But something happens with anticipation. Sort of like asking someone, hey, will you go out with me or will you hang out with me? If they don't answer and they're non-committal, your anticipation, your expectation keeps building and building. But if they never give you a clear answer, you become apathetic. You start to lose interest. Even if they do say yes, or you're waiting for that game, your expectations are so high, they've made you wait for so long, they're almost doomed to disappoint you. Now, all was pretty silent until Half-Life Alyx was released, which was a VR game in 2019. This was like a flare being fired into the night sky. They were doing something with the franchise. There was a book that came out after Half-Life Alyx that spoke about the development of this game and Valve's work philosophy. It was very enlightening for fans. This book was where a lot of the assumptions as well as facts came from regarding Valve's process and what happened to the lost episode. It talked about their workplace structure, how they like to designate work or the lack thereof of direction, and how sometimes one could assume that could lead to no one really wanting to take on the Half-Life burden, so it just never got made. There have been a lot of little tidbits throughout the years and interesting things that have happened regarding Half-Life and Valve, like a Steam boycott of Left 4 Dead 2 when Valve released that instead of giving fans information about Half-Life 3. People want answers. It's borderline torture what Valve is doing, I say. There have been multiple silently canceled versions of the game. There was talk of the game being developed in early 2014, 2015, and they were planning to use procedural levels to make sure that no two playthroughs were ever the same, but that appears like it was shut down as well. We know how procedural generation has panned out in games. It's a mixed bag. You have Starfield, which seems like one of the worst examples. Then you have Minecraft. You have No Man's Sky, which is right in the middle on an upward trajectory. So it's possible, but back then I wonder, could they have pulled it off? I don't know, I'm curious, what do you think? But in 2010, Valve's CEO, Gabe Newell, he actually mentioned the game. This is one of the interviews I was talking about where they seemed to confirm, yeah, something's happening. What he said regarding the future of the Half-Life franchise, he said, Valve intends to return the Half-Life franchise to its psychological horror roots by exploiting the fans' deepest fears, which he sums up as the death of their children and the fading of their own ability. That's pretty hardcore. We don't know if this ended up turning into Half-Life Alyx or whatever that idea was over these 9 years, these 15 years, never ended up panning out on the timeline or as they thought it would. The most recent news we have about the game, as recently as 2 months ago, a YouTuber by the name of Gabe Follower, who has a good track record with Valve info. He actually provided info on Counter-Strike 2. He provided some credible information about that. So he has a decent track record with Valve information. And he said that there's a Half-Life being developed, and it's undergoing testing, and even family and friends may have seen the game. So that's where we stand today though. And even in this information dump from Gabe Follower and one of his cohorts, they still made it clear that this does not mean a new Half-Life game is imminent. So they were very clear to say that. They covered their tracks, so they don't feel confident about this. Enough at least to say, yes, this is definitely happening. They're not that confident. There was even a hint at this in Half-Life Alyx's ending. I won't get into much more than that. They opened a door. Problem is, we still have no official confirmation. That ending sort of opened up a lot of possibilities, showed fans that they want to remain in this universe. There's still some interest from their side, obviously. They released a game 5 years ago, and that ending seems to show that they are still interested in it. We have no answers, not from the horse's mouth. Why is that? This is the part of the video where I reveal that I myself have only played a bit of the Half-Life games. I know. Time is a thing though. It's hard to find, but even so, I still find myself wanting Half-Life 3 to come out. So these people can finally rest. The way I see it, the way that the discourse sort of looks online, it feels like they're lost souls who can't pass on to the afterlife until this game is finally announced, until they've finally played it. So, it's natural to wonder why people love this game so much. Now, by this point, Half-Life 1 is ancient news. It's been a while. Came out in 1998. And I love my old games, so don't come at me here. I play plenty of old games, but it's almost been 30 years. If you look back at the game, it looks like Quake, Doom, GoldenEye. It's like any of those older FPS games, N64 style, stuff like that. But why was it different? Let me just say this game, when compared to those other FPS games I mentioned, is so different. The atmosphere, the graphics, how smart the AI is. The game still holds up to this day. Even graphically, I would argue it's just so interesting, and the atmosphere, the stylization of the graphics were done so well that it still holds up and it's fun to play. Especially when it comes to the writing. By all accounts, this game had more of a story or a plot than any of those other games. Not to denigrate those games, they were just more blood, guns, monsters than an actual story with NPCs that talk to you and stuff like that. The way that Half-Life 1 starts out is just so epic and hardcore. You're right into it. You feel lonely, you feel isolated, and unlike those other games, Half-Life 1 also did something interesting. They don't hand you a shotgun, they don't hand you a pistol. You start out without a gun. You're walking around the world, you're learning the world, and just walking around like a human. The way you get your first gun is by desperately scavenging it in a desperate attempt to survive after something horrible has happened. So that world building, that writing is so on point, and it felt so ahead of its time. It's a really fun game. A shooter with a story. That's hard to come by even to this day. Half-Life revolutionized the FPS genre. It is much more interesting to play than a lot of shooters these days. But what set it apart when you look at how people used to talk about it if they played it in 1998 was the attention to detail, the story, the NPCs, and how they could actually feel that attention to detail and that passion in the actual pixels of the game. I mean, it had to be amazing if people are so interested in Half-Life 3 to this day, right? And Half-Life 2 is just so cool and graphically blows me away. What an awesome game as well. They revolutionized a lot of different aspects of the FPS genre and even storytelling and world building. They did something really special. They created a tone, they created an atmosphere that I've never really experienced. It's very similar to Alan Wake. It's very Remedy. If you played a Remedy game, it makes you feel like you're tripping out. It makes you feel like things are going wrong, but you can't tell if they're in your head or what's actually real. These abominations you're seeing. Is this all actually happening? You know, stuff like that. It's awesome. And if you haven't experienced it, you should absolutely play it, because right from the first moment, it's so cool and it gets you immersed. It's just mind-blowing to me that these games came out when they did. So this series is awesome. Why wouldn't Valve just release another one? Clearly people love it. They can do no wrong, right? Well, it appears that Valve is a bit burdened by their success here. They've set the bar too high, such that no matter what Half-Life 3 looks like, they're doomed to always be under that bar. Which is why they released Half-Life Alyx. They released a VR game. VR is very much in its infancy in the video game space. So it's a perfect place for someone who wants to revolutionize and kind of set the standard for something to go into. They saw VR as a place where they could do what they did with Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 and revolutionize the gaming, the shooter space. That's what they were trying to do. The problem is, when it comes to Half-Life 3, how can they possibly innovate again like they did? They didn't want to release Half-Life 3 as a VR game. They probably want it to be a console game, a PC game. They want it to be a part of the mainstream space. With Half-Life 3, there's nothing quite revolutionary that they can do with that. At least it appears, otherwise they would have released it, right? They've sort of trapped themselves in a corner here. Now, if that's the reason they haven't released it, there are a few problems with that. They're truly being unjust to their fans, I believe. Not being able to be groundbreaking or being afraid to meet your own expectations are no reason to not release something. It's funny because I face that with every video that I make on this channel. I want every video to be better than the last. I want every video to have better editing, better writing, a better use of my voice, but it hasn't always been like that. There have been multiple times where the video I release after the last one is actually worse. And I try to learn from that and become better in the grand scheme of things. If I followed that exact code of creation, I would never release a video because I'd be frozen by my own fear and my own expectation. That's why it's important to still get stuff out, especially when you have fans and expectations that you're trying to meet. I just think that's really important. Now, if they'd come out and canceled it and said, you know what, we're moving on from the Half-Life series, that would have been fine. But the way that they're stringing this along is tough. It's tough to watch, and it's not it. All they really need is that Half-Life atmosphere, the writing, the design, the characters. It's distinct enough on its own without being revolutionary. Or at least it was, but now that it's been this long, it might need to be revolutionary. Now, Valve also has Steam to tide them over. They've got that PC gaming market on lockdown. So why would they even make Half-Life 3? Why would they even bother with the potential controversy of releasing? Well, the thing is, we know they still want to be involved in that franchise. We have Half-Life Alyx, of course, and the ending. And they're they're making hints just frequently enough about it. The problem is they've waited so long that they almost need to make Half-Life 3 the best shooter we've ever seen, like I was saying. And who would ever want to develop a game under those circumstances? They've set the bar too high, but But so is the public now. And it's not the public's fault. It's because it's been so long, it's a natural bar raising that's happened. So it's sort of a trap. Some ex-devs have even said, this game has to be revolutionary, or it shouldn't exist at all, basically. That's how they're thinking. We know that's how they're thinking. And that's a tough place to be. It's probably easier to just practice that avoidance behavior. Like I was also saying, it seems like they've got a very loosey-goosey, laissez-faire style of management, which I'm sure really helps breed creativity. When it comes to releasing games, sticking to deadlines, and being disciplined, it could really falter there if you have a game like Half-Life 3, where who wants to be the head behind that? Who wants to take on that massive burden? And it appears that it has faltered there. They've worked on everything but Half-Life 3, and it seems that they're making some sort of a conscious decision. It reminds me of the moments where I need to text or email someone, but I just never do it. That mental avoidance, which actually ends up making things worse in the long term a lot of the times. Sort of avoiding that short-term anxiety to only end up exacerbating the long-term anxiety. Now, I actually think the gaming world might explode if Half-Life 3 was announced. I would love to see it, but here's the problem. Again, people would almost certainly be disappointed. At this point, the game can never be what people really want. And those gamers that have been waiting for 2 decades for this, I don't know if anything could ever please them, and it's not their fault. If you wait 2 decades for something, is it even possible to meet your expectations? I'm sure that there are some really chill people out there who are just like, I just want to see this game. Just give me that closure. But I think a lot of fans are like, come on, man. It's been 2 decades. And I think Valve knows that, and they may even feel that expectation from their fans and know that they're not doing right by them. It must be a lot to think about. As someone who overthinks constantly, I can't imagine being in that position they're in, with all these eyeballs on them every time they do anything. But the real thing is, Half-Life 3 never has to come out, and it will be okay. Heck, it might even be better if it doesn't come out at this point at all, because they may have actually reached that point of no return when they'll never meet those expectations. I will say, Half-Life 3, whether it's called that or not, I do feel like it's on the way. If I was a betting man, well, first of all, I'd fold. Probably, I'd bet for it to come out at some point, maybe in 2030, somewhere in there. I could see them trying to use a revolutionary AI model, and I'm not talking about something like the Radiant AI in Skyrim, which didn't really end up being that radiant or revolutionary. I'm talking about something like being able to have full conversations and actually living through this world and talking back and forth as if you're talking to real people using AI. I could see them making a game like that, and I could see Half-Life 3 taking on that form, and them being ready for that when gaming gets to that point. That's sort of the angle that I'm betting on, and that I could see. The other thing we can't forget is that Valve gets something out of this too. They get hype. They get videos like this. They get conversations. So even if it is canceled internally, why would they cancel it publicly? It gets views. It gets clicks. It gets people interested, and it gets people talking about Valve. Again, not that they need it. They have so many other forms of revenue, but the other thing is, us gamers love to speculate. So, like me making this video, I'm not even the biggest Half-Life fan, and I haven't really given the games the time I want them to, but I'm just so interested because every time there's a gaming event, Half-Life 3 or Bloodborne, it's part of that gaming speculation. Either way, it's the biggest mystery in gaming. What do you think? What in the world is going to go on with Half-Life? I'm curious to hear what your opinion is. Anyway, besides that, thank you for watching. This was a fun video to make. It would be kind of funny if this ends up lining up with some crazy announcement where we can look back on this and say, holy cow, it was the AI. But yeah, we'll see. If you haven't tried Half-Life, try it out. What a cool series. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.